Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Star Citizen Live Animation Vocation. I'm your host, creative content lead. Is that my title? Yeah. Creative content lead, Jared Huckabee. And if you've never seen Star Citizen Live Animation Vocation before, that's where we take about an hour, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter, depending on meetings and stuff like at the end of our week, and we sit down with some of our incredibly talented CIG developers, and we discuss all aspects of their work, their career, who they are, what their favorite episode of Jerry Springer is. You know, we're really kind of open to a whole host of things. Joining us on the show this week is one of my favorite people, not just favorite employees. One of my favorite people, a genuine mensch in the best sense of the words, lover of tiki drinks and the tiki bars that house them. Animation director, Mr. Steve Bender. Steve.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you for having me.
You're here.
I am.
Now, you're not just here as a visiting, you are the latest in a small but esteemed group of individuals who have now permanently relocated to Manchester.
That is very true. So about, was that April 20th? If you noticed the weather was really nice and everything like that, that was literally, I brought that out from California just for you.
You moved on April 20th?
I did.
I moved on April 22nd.
Really?
Yeah, I just completed my first year of penance here.
So we're April buddies.
Oh.
Bing.
So, you're animation director.
Yes.
Oh my God. Eric the Nomad's like, awkward. Only for you. It was beautiful for me. So, you're animation director. Because every show is somebody's first, and because we haven't had you on the show in a couple years.
I know.
Not since before the pandemic. I don't think we ever had you on during the I can't remember. Maybe. I've done a lot of these.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep them straight. Tell everybody who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
Yeah, so you said my name's Steve Bender. I'm the animation director at Cloud Imperium. And I oversee the creation of animation largely for things like the player and for the AI in the game. I also shoot motion capture, direct motion capture. I work with the different designers and design leads in laying out, working to figure out how something's going to work, what animations need to go in there, how they combine, and things like that. So I'm really lucky in that I have myself, I have a great team, a great animation team that works on this project. So it's not me doing it. Mm-hmm. I'm working with these talented animators.
You say it's not me doing it, but yeah. I have seen you inside the suit with the ping pong balls on more than one occasion.
Well,
sometimes it is.
That is true. Sometimes late at night I get into the suit and sort of dance around.
No, I mean for work. Don't.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course. In fact, just last week I was wearing the I was wearing the MOCAP suit.
For work.
For work, yeah, absolutely.
If you have seen Steve Bender before on one of these shows, you already know this is going to be one of those shows. So, let's today. Obviously, there's nothing that directly applies to the big. We're not going to talk about the game and the current state and whatnot stuff like that. We're going to talk more about animation in general and its role in games and in game development. You hit basically three kind of pillars between the player stuff, the AI stuff, and then the motion capture stuff, which can be used for cinematics, for the those awesome commercials, Jack's video, stuff like that. So I want to take it kind of one pillar at a time. Let's just talk about player stuff now.
There's also facial animations.
Oh, there's also facial animation.
But that is part of gameplay. It's part of the player, and it's part of, in fact, anything we do here that has facial animation, that facial animation crew is also involved in that.
So let's start from the perspective of the player. Obviously, our game is a first-person universe. The player experiences everything from the first person, but they do also have the option of switching out to third person for cinematics. But then every other person sees your character from third person and stuff like this. Talk to me about what animation does for the player. Is there? You've had this conversation for years and years. Your experience goes back to Crytek and before that stuff. But let's talk about what is and isn't animation, for instance, for players. I've jumped into the game. I'm a player character. There's all the things I can do, from takedowns to firing an MP4 to running around and catching the thing. What is animation? What parts of that experience are directly related to animation?
It's the character motions. So things like, for instance, when you're doing those takedowns, your hands in the view, or if you're kicked out to third person or they're seeing you in third person, the third person animation of that, the third person view of that happening, the victim who ends up being quite unfortunate in that. That's all character animation. As well, our guys will author motion for the view, especially in the case where they're doing particular actions, so in the takedowns and stuff like that. Because one of the things about a first-person game, when you're playing in first person, is as compared to a third-person game. So I'm running around all the time. I know who I am. I know what things feel like, how they're supposed to play like. When I jump, I know how far that's supposed to go. When you're in a first-person game, the only thing you have is the camera, and then your hands, and that's your only real frame of reference. I mean, you could look down and see your feet, but you tend to run into walls, right? So all of that, it's basically all of the personality or type of character that you're playing needs to come through those hands and that camera.
That's weird. So it's like, so many of the action, from running to jumping to climbing, like this, you make a good point that from the first person, you have to kind of convey all those things through hands.
Yes.
Are there some activities where maybe if it was in real life, you probably wouldn't see your hands in front of your face, but in the video game world, you have to, because it's the only way to communicate that to the player?
Absolutely. So for those of our viewers who are well-versed in firearms and things like that, if you have a firearm in front of you and you're reloading it, the best way to think of a first-person camera, at least how I think of it, is you put glasses on with like a box on it, and that's your field of view, and that's what you're gonna see. You don't see anything down here.
Right.
There's no peripheral. Unless you look down, you don't see it. So if I'm going to reload and I'm reloading down here, so my view box is open and I can look around, if I show exactly that in the view, I'm from my eyeballs, I'm not going to see this action. When I reload in real life, I'm not looking down to see this. I can feel where that button is.
You can do it down against your torso.
I go like this, and I pull this mag out, and the way that I hold that mag, when it goes back into the pistol, it's by feel. I can do it in the dark. So I don't need to have it in my view. That's just one simple example from combat that, a lot of these different reloads and things like that, you need to kind of cheat them up.
Right.
So that the player can see what is happening.
What would happen though if we were to pursue the totally 100% diegetic, you're reloading under. It's like, when you're dead-eyeing somebody and you know your kit so well, you can pull it out and you do everything by feel like a lot of the professional soldiers can, but you wouldn't see that. I suppose as a player, you'd wonder if you were actually reloaded. It's like, have I finished?
Yeah, you'd have no idea what your actions are. Yeah. Because the other thing is, when you do these things in real life, you understand, like I'm sitting in this chair right now. I know my arm is on this chair because I can feel it. But if I can't feel it, how do I know it's there? So in the case of it's the same concept. So there's lots of things that go on as you're moving through your everyday world that you know where things are. You know your hand is here. It's not just all of a sudden you're going to turn around and it hit you in the head, right? So, but in a first-person view, in a first-person game, you don't know where that thing is unless we show you. So, and the trick is, you know, you don't want to be walking around all the time with your hands like this, because that's just creepy. Nobody does that.
Stanton Strangler says, is this actually live? It seems cut. He thinks you're doing a good job, David. He thinks it's professionally cut. He's just doing it live. So you have to bring all these things up kind of somewhat artificially, you know, into the view so the first person player can see it. How's that play to third person though? You know, obviously we're building this massive universe with, you know, with ideally hundreds of other players that can be around you. Yeah. Are they always, when they reload, do they always see you bringing the gun up to the face?
Well, the way that we deal with the first person and third person connection in Star Citizen requires us to sort of, I guess, split the difference would be a great way of describing that, because we don't want to put it here, because then it's going to look really weird.
Every player running around like, you know, like.
Yeah, it's going to look really weird in third person. So we have to kind of go, okay, there. That's about our distance, and that's going to look decent in first and third person.
So every time, I mean, I know the answer to this, but every time you're reviewing an animation, you have to find this sweet spot between what works for first person and what works for third person.
Yes.
So, and a single player game would never have to worry about that. And what I tend to find because you just see everything from the first person, I guess. And then in a lot of Battlefield style games, it's all about speed so much they can sometimes just kind of cut and make it really quick to kind of get you back. But we're always pushing for that greater sense of realism whenever we can. And I know there was a lot of work that went into unifying that first and third person stuff. Talk to me about that work. Old heads, people who have been following the project, you're gonna already know what this is, but there's a lot of people that have never heard us. You talk about this process of unifying the first and third person perspectives.
Oh, wow, that's a whole.
It was an easy thing. That was like a week's worth of work, right?
No, no, it was not.
He's got spirit in the sky, like he's going through a Vietnam flashback right now.
Just a moment
here.
here.
This is a safe space, Steve. I want to.
Oh my God!
You can't. Nobody can hurt you here. It's just memories.
Because of how the third person animation. So if you just put a third person animation on a character, and you have your camera, if you want your camera coming from the head. And you put a third person animation on a character and you move around, you are going to be seeing this down here. It's not going to look right. But yet we still need to be able to control certain aspects for the player in sort of the player's space. Any move that I make in third person, and I go like this, all of a sudden in first person camera looks like this. It's enormous. So what we had to do is take that third person animation and then lock it down with sort of like an aim pose, if you will, on top of it, and then add certain actions on top of it. So certain motion on top of it, which we could then craft that sort of control on it.
You know, you mentioned if you want the first person view to come from the head, that skirts the fact that there are many games out there where the first person camera is not physically where the head of the person would be. No. It's, you know, we never think about it. We just kind of accept the reality of the game that we're playing. But oftentimes the first person camera, it would be located somewhere around the chest, you know, which is the shortcut to keeping hands and everything into face.
Exactly.
But we because I don't know, we don't know better. We put the camera in the head. We put it like in the eyes. You know, everybody who's played Star Citizen has had that time where the camera gets kind of off centered and you can see the eyeball, you can see your own eyeballs, you know, floating in front. Like we don't cheat it. We put the camera where the eyes are supposed to be. I know that's not traditionally that's not strictly an animation thing, but has that made your life easier or harder? That one choice.
Am I allowed to no comment this question? Right? I mean, I just did move out to Manchester, so it's been there's been a lot of creative, technical choices that we've had to make to be able to get other technical choices to work.
It's a very diplomatic way of saying no feature exists in a vacuum. And it's one thing, you can make this work on its own, you can make this work on its own, you can make this work on its own, this work on its own, and then it's when you combine them that bugs are born, and that troubles are born, and that backlogs are born.
Yeah, exactly.
And stuff like that. But I mean, ultimately, it's part of the DNA of our project. It's that would be the easy way, and that would be how maybe some other game would do it, and yeah, that's how many other games have done it and everything. But we part of this endeavor we are on, and part of what I really like about working for CR is he'll always kind of push. Well, okay, so no other game does it that way, but is it because they just haven't figured it out?
That's very true.
Or something. So we tend to push into things like that. And yeah, that camera actually being in the eyes is one of those quintessential Star Citizen things that I really like about the project, even with all the headaches and the trauma, the clear trauma. You can't see on camera, but Steve is vibrating right now. He's got a low level vibration going on. He's bracing himself on the chair, but I can tell he's vibrating.
I'm secretly. Have you ever? Like whenever I get really nervous about something, you ever go to the doctor and like they're gonna give you a shot or something like that. What I do is I pinch myself on the other side of the body, because that pain, right, causes my brain to go over here, so I don't feel this, and I know I caused this, so that doesn't hurt at all. I have been pinching myself for the past 5 minutes, Jared.
You're listening to Secrets of the Animation Directors, only at twitch.tv/Star Citizen. All right, so obviously animation is absolutely essential to the player. I mean, it is everything that a player does in one way, shape, or form. Let's move on to that second pillar. You talked about AI.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that everything involved with AI, everything an AI does, everything an AI says, every way an AI behaves is the sole purview of AI programmers or AI engineers. But I don't think it's often understood just how much of the AI experience is actually animation based. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So we were actually talking about this the other day, in that I hate the word AI. And the reason I hate the word AI is because, so from a code standpoint, a entity goes from point A to point B, and then it goes here and it goes to point B, and then it goes over there and it goes to point C or whatever. I forgot what letter.
I wasn't going to point it out.
Did you notice that?
But I was impressed. Impressed you got there.
It can do whatever it wants. It can go down the hallway and immediately turn around. I mean, like this, and flip around and go back, because it's an entity. But human beings don't react that way, right? There are decisions that you can make from a code standpoint, where you say, my guy is going to strafe to his left. He's holding a rifle. He's going to strafe to his left, and he's going to go up that staircase, right? Anybody who's ever tried to, and if you haven't,
It's going.
like get out of your chair right now and go do it.
upstairs.
Try and strafe upstairs while pointing something. It doesn't have to be a gun. You can go get a spoon or something, and concentrate on whatever you're pointing at, and try not to fall up the stairs, right? That sort of thing, an entity can do it. A person can't. And the key here is that the animation's job is to, in each of the animations, to look like a real person doing something. But then also the animation's team's job is to work with the AI programmers and the AI designers to talk about how something that's happening is that's not what a person's going to do. Like, for instance, the other day we had an instance where the pathing code, we noticed, had characters going forward, and then they would flip and turn around and come all the way back. And then they would make these hard right 90-degree turns. And it was like, okay, well, but the character was doing this, and it was and coming back, and it looked...
One of the most immersion-breaking things that
was
can
like,
happen.
what the heck? So then we said, okay, well, part of our job in animation is to describe what the AI code is doing in a way that's believable for performance. So why would you go that way and then all of a sudden stop and come directly back? You forgot your keys,
Okay.
right? So what we do is then we go, okay, well, let's insert an animation there where your character's walking, doop, 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 and came back. And when we made that animation and animation programming injected it into the system, all of a sudden, what looked like a stupid decision that was being made by the entity looked like a person who, like, he forgot his keys and he was going back, and you bought it. It was believable.
The AI animation, the only reason I really want to get to this topic, and I'm glad we're on it right now, is that there are many things that contribute to immersion.
Yeah.
In a game, and everybody knows, one of Star Citizen's big, buzzwords is immersion. Having a fantastically drawn environment, with a fully realized atmosphere and proper, lighting that behaves like, those are all insanely important. But all the a soundscape, things echoing the way that you expect them to, voices coming from the direction they're supposed to come, all those things are super important. But when you see characters, non-player characters, do that 180 instant, and to retract like unless they're the Queen's Guard in front of Buckingham Palace, watching all this stuff, it's one of those things that instantly breaks your immersion.
Yeah.
It's so animation is one of those tools that it doesn't get the same spotlight that fog and lighting and sound does, but it's absolutely essential to making a place feel alive, to making a place feel believable. Obviously, I can already hear. I've already seen the YouTube comments while I'm talking, because a lot of folks' perspective is only what's in the PU right now, and of course we know that such a big focus is on Squadron 42 at the moment, but I want to talk a little bit about what I've seen in Squadron 42, the life cycles, the people who roam the halls, the janitors who sit there and they mop, and then they kind of stop and they think for a second, exactly that oh, my lost keys thing. It's like, oh, I got to go back and do this. The people in the mess hall who are going down, and then they get this and they get this, and they kind of think for a second. It's like, okay, no, I'm going to get this. It's those moments, just those tiny moments of I don't know what you call them, that insert, that animation insert, that consideration or whatever, is the difference between a ship that seems pristine and kind of, oh, that's a nice model, and suddenly now it's a place that's lived in.
It's about thought, right? So when I talk about that, I try not to use the word AI a lot. and I try and use character or people or Doug Johnson or something like that, right? It's about keeping in mind that the people moving through, the entities moving through the world are supposed to be people. And in fact, we were just talking about it today someone was using a locker, and it was, the character goes up and the animation stops. And then he opens the locker. And it was like, why is he doing that? Well, because of, this is the thing of it. No. I don't need for you to tell me how many frames are there.
The technical reason why.
I don't need for you to tell me even tell me why he just stopped and stared at that locker.
The character's intention.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, get rid of the pause, right? Let's cut that out. Let's trim that together. Let's make that flow. We had another example where one of our animators had said there were people picking up crates and moving them, and we have to have a technical point in the behavior where the AI needs to check where it's going to go next, where it's going to path to next. And where they had placed that point with the myriad of different fragments that they had that contained animations was after the guy picked up the box. And so he picked up the box and stood there like this and then walked off. And it was sort of like, once you get over the age of 40, if any of your viewers have experienced that, you have these moments all the time.
Me.
But we talked about where we could, okay, if it needs to happen there, you could have the box there and go, sort of look around. Where am I supposed to go with this? Or we could shift it earlier. So we come in, we acquire the box, or we know what box we're going to use. We pull out a data pad. And as we're doing this, the AI's pathfinding to where it needs to go. The second it finishes, we put the data pad away, pick the box up, and move. So how do you hide those sort of choice points or those pathing issues that the AI need to make? They're not as big of an issue when you have a game that is local, but when you have servers and those times that are happening, you do need something to sort of hide that answer hasn't come back yet, and it needs to look like a performance. It needs to look like a thinking person.
There's again, Squadron, we don't want to talk. I don't want to spoil anything, but one of the other behaviors that I've seen in Squadron reviews and everything is like the weapon vendor kind of thing. It's like when you go and it's like, okay, it's like, well, what can I get for you? Whatever. It's like, I'd like a this, whatever. And I goes, and then, does a little nod and whatever, walks over, takes a moment to look. Doesn't just instantly know where everything is. Like, grabs this, does a little, doesn't just grab it and put it down. He does a little, and puts it down and slides. It's just those moments, those little tiny animation moments are, to me, where everything wins or loses. It's like that. That's where you've succeeded. It's everybody knows I don't want to throw any shame to. We'll use this as our transition to facial animations here. The Mass Effect Andromeda, that famously when it came out, there was one character whose facial animation was not. It didn't have everything it needed. It was like, my face is tired. Like it was tired, and it wasn't. It didn't have those little moments in between. And people wrote much of the entire game off of that. Now, there's going to be somebody in chat that's like, no, that game sucked and I have 50 other reasons. Not what we're talking about here. But that moment, that one failed animation, turned the tide on a lot of the reception of that game. It's like, it's so important. So let's move into facial animation.
Yeah.
Now, how important is facial animation to selling the believability of the characters that you're interacting with, to telling a story?
Well, one of the things that is really kind of interesting, and you can actually test this right now in the game, and you can do it as players to players, if you're using the FOIP system, for instance, is put your helmet on. Put on an opaque helmet and look at what you're looking at. And what you're going to find out is that you're looking at the person in general, right? And, you know, he's waving, or he's doing this, or he's pulling out this weapon, or whatever he's doing. The second he takes that helmet off, you're looking at his face. Everything happens right here. So much of our understanding and connection with people happens just in this tiny little area, that it becomes exceedingly important, especially in the case of, say, cinematics, the work that the facial team has done on the cinematics, or on the work that they've done on the marketing stuff. It's also important in the case of the AI. So that's another thing that we're going to be coming on with the facial team, as the body animations and the way that we've had to shoot them, which is just often without a head cam at the same time. The facial animations start coming onto a character. We had a perfect example of that yesterday. There was a character sitting on a bunk bed, and they were looking at a mobi-glass, and their feet were moving a little bit. They weren't kicking them back and forth or anything like that, but they were like, and you're looking at my face right now, I can tell you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But, right, they're doing this. And one of the designers said, well, we need sad, we need happy, we need nervous animations for this bunk bed. And it was like,
For the person on the bunk bed.
Do you? Because what if I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Or I'm like, oh God, oh, I don't think we're going to make this. Or, oh, you got to be fucking kidding me.
That's your one.
That's my one.
Your one. Mark it, David. That's his one.
So, but that is that's an example of just from a body animation standpoint. Then you put in on that face, and you get a sort of deeper performance.
So let's pull back a little bit.
Yeah.
MOCAP versus PCAP. One of the most common, I see the terms used interchangeably when they shouldn't be, and it always annoys me when I hear it. Talk to me about what is MOCAP, and then what is PCAP, and the differences between the two.
Yeah, they're essentially the same exact base. So motion capture and performance capture both use the same MOCAP suit. They use the same markers. They use the same cameras. They use the same software. They use the same, we'll bring things in from Motion Builder in, and we will, be able to previs or previs as well in the engine. It's all the same hardware, same technology. Where performance capture adds a second layer is when you then add the helmet and the audio. So as well, in fact, in motion capture before, we've had the body suit and the helmet on with the camera on recording, but because we weren't recording any audio, it wasn't, you could sort of like, well, that's not really performance capture, right, but you are grabbing the facial animation, right, at the same time as the body. But the whole point of performance capture is that back in the day, what you used to do is you used to capture the body animation, and then you would capture the face and audio somewhere else. Or you would capture the face, you'd do the, game I worked on ages and ages and ages ago. We did the audio first. So they recorded everything. They had all their lines. We had to put that together into track view and line it up along with our block out animations. Then we went and we pantomimed essentially body-wise to those audio lines. And then after that was done, we had in fact, the current technical vice president here wrote this software where we had video, and I would, in the case of this character, I mimicked the lines that the actor said, and also watching the body, and we used that to drive the facial animation. So we had to do it in multiple parts, whereas in performance capture, you just capture it all at once, and you can master the audio from that audio that you've created that day.
Now, that's not to say that there isn't a performance aspect to even MOCAP. I mean, we've not to get too far into it, but even just before the show, we were looking at some MOCAP for a particular animation and going, it's like we're not going to use any names, so we're probably, but it's like, oh, I wish the performer had done this better and whatnot. So I mean, there's still you just like a mime. There's performance even with your body.
Well, I got into the suit. We had to do. I was capturing. So right now in the PU, can I talk about walk cycles as an example?
Oh, please! I've been waiting.
Okay. A lot of the characters are walking. They're walking very static, like this, because of how the B spaces are authored. And I was like, I can't stand looking at this anymore. So I started going in and capturing long cycles with other motion in it, so characters looking around and things like that. And we started ninja missioning these things into...
I'm sorry, what was that word?
Ninja missioning.
Ninja missioning.
Yeah, it's when it's not on the schedule, but we're doing it anyway. Usually
it's actually the subject of next week's ISC. We'll watch that.
Usually after hours or at lunch or something like that, and like take this thing and put that in. But I had to do. We wanted like an injured character, and we wanted a tough guy character. So I was performing that day. I had to get into the role and stuff like that. So I was listening to some heavy metal and stuff like this for the tough guy. And then for the injured character, it didn't really look, it kind of looked fake that I was limping.
Because you were faking a limp.
Yeah,
So you broke your leg.
So I took a screwdriver and I whacked myself repeatedly in the leg like that.
No, don't.
And then
I regret saying anything.
And then
we've been on track for like 33 minutes. We've been so good. So it was looking fake. I'm gonna roll you back. It was looking kind of fake. And what did you do? What did you actually do?
I literally took the screwdriver and beat myself in the leg with it until it hurt, and then walked across the way.
The decisions and actions of Steve Bender do not represent those of Cloud Imperium Games, Roberts Space Industries, or its subsidiaries.
I bleed for you, Jared. But yeah, I mean that's you can come at it from different ways. And there's other examples that we were shooting and trying to establish what is the role of this character, or what are they going to be doing, say, in the persistent universe. You're going to be going there and you're going to see the character shopping, right? Getting into that moment, trying to imagine, the time I went with my mom to the craft fair, right? And what did that feel like, Oh, I really like how that. And this is neat. I like this little bobblehead thing you got going on here. That's right, and just trying to be honest with it. So you do have to have that performance, no matter what, whether it's performance capture, motion capture, combat, things like that.
Oh. So a couple questions, and then we're going to take a break here. We've covered a couple of the different major disciplines and how animation works. I want to ask you about an aspect that is so important in all MMOs. We talked about it years ago, and we were brainstorming some amazing things and whatever. Emotes.
Yes.
In the PU, we've sort of had the same emotes for quite a while. I know obviously there are plans to as the wheel of development cycles back around and resources can come back to that. Talk to me about your view on emotes and how important emotes are. And
it's really hard to be able to understand how important they are without getting feedback from the community. Like, which emotes are they using the most? Which ones don't they like? Which ones do they like? I see dancing a lot and stuff like that.
Every MMO,
right? We did do a session a while. Oh gosh, this was pre-pandemic.
Yeah,
we actually had some backers do some emotes with us and stuff like that, and we've talked about being able to perhaps add emotes related to. We have some hard of hearing employees, and we've talked about adding in more of those sorts of actions and things like that.
ASL stuff.
Yeah. And that you can also then utilize, because we think of language often as this thing that comes out of our mouth, right? But if you don't have the ability to make those sounds, or whether it's from a physical inability to do it, or like if I'm underwater, right? And I need to communicate something to you, I'm not going to go, "Hey, Jared," right? And things like this. A similar sort of thing. Who says a similar sort of thing can't be true in space? So if I see you at a distance, right, and I need to make some sort of motion or gesture that you can see me from that.
I'll quiz you here. Can you do? I want to call out an emote. I want to see if you can do it for me. Can you do rude 3 for me?
No, because I don't know how they have implemented them as a number, but I can give you a whole bunch of them. But I think I've already exceeded my nastiness quota on the stream.
Give me the first rude that comes to your mind. I feel like you're missing part of it.
This one. We got. I don't think I can give you the finger, can I? Or this one. Right. That came from. Was inspired by a movie. The other one I have to stand up for. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I can do it.
Last question before the break. Give me your top 3. If the clock has come around, you've got the resources, you've got the time, there's nothing else to do. None of the 1,000 other things that are more important have all been done. Top 3 emotes you'd add to the game right now if you could.
Oh, God. Well, thinking about the areas that we're... Well, no, we have that one. I was going to say, oh, that stinks. But we have that one because, I'm drawing a blank here. I'm really drawing a blank here.
I remember we talked...
Salsa dancing.
Salsa dancing.
Salsa dancing.
Maybe a little merengue?
Right? I'd love to do... The one we talked about, I remember when I first got here, we were talking about emotes, is our 2-person emotes.
That's what I've been trying to get. I've been trying to lead you to that, the tandem emotes.
Right, absolutely.
That's where I want, that's where Star Citizen can take that step beyond.
Right, you and I can get into the verse and tango together.
Tango together, I do merengue and then it triggers you and it automatically by proximity, it goes, oh, you're doing merengue B, I'm doing merengue A, because it can send some progress. High five.
Yeah.
I've never seen an actual effective high five. I'm not sure somebody's going to be like, there's one game that does it, but I haven't seen it. But, where you high five, where one person goes up and the hands actually connect. I mean, these 2-person tandem emotes, that's where I've been slowly trying to.
Or things like, for instance, when a game that I worked on also, again, a long time ago, had things where you would go up to a character and he would help you up, say, up above an area. Something like that, where you accept a request from me. So I'm like, would you like to salsa? And you say yes, and then we do a little spin or something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, people are calling out like Portal 2 has a high five and so. I'm talking about in an MMO though. I'm talking about where you can have hundreds and hundreds of people and it's got a target, it's got to figure out who the right target is amongst a crowd of people, not there's one player and there's another player and it automatically knows who your pair is. I'm talking about in an MMO, hugging.
Yeah.
Just a simple ability to hug. I'm a sensitive man. I like to hug.
Now, hugging is actually a tricky thing in first person. In third person, it's not a problem. But because you just look at it's just two people hugging. But if you really think about how the camera is working, right? You end up like if you really wanted to get up close and personal with what someone is thinking, there's no better way than to have your camera go straight through their head.
Look forward to that. We're gonna take a quick break here, mostly because I got to drink a drink of water. See what I mean? We're gonna be back in a minute. It's still Steve Bender. He's coming back. Stay tuned. Water. All right, that was a look at the snowy vistas of Pyro 3. Soon to, well, I shouldn't say soon, one day arriving at the Pyro system. Yeah. So Steve.
Yes.
Second half of the show.
Second half.
You're back as our guest in the second half. We talk about personal stuff. No more work.
Okay.
Work is done.
7 Philadelphia Eagles, cheesesteaks, bourbon old fashioned,
Tiki drinks.
tiki drinks.
I had the worst cheesesteak at Disneyland Paris.
Oh my God! Ooh.
Like it's usually you can count on Disneyland food to be pretty good. Like you go to Epcot and that stuff's all locally sourced from the countries in the pavilion or whatever. So I got kind of spoiled by Epcot, and I thought maybe it would be the same at Disneyland. No, I saw that was Earl of Sandwich, like a whole place dedicated to sandwiches, and they had a Philly cheesesteak on there. I'm like, and I should have known the problem right away when the only cheese option was Swiss.
Yeah. No.
And I was like that should have been the warning right there. I mean, not that Swiss isn't bad. Swiss is good, but it's just if that's the only option for a Philly cheesesteak.
No, it has to. It's very specific. When I went to a couple places in LA that said they had Philly cheesesteaks and hadn't found one, and I remember going to this this truck, sort of taco truck thing, and I'm in line, ready for just another disappointment. And I said, he said to the guy, came out, I said, so what do you think about how the Eagles doing this year? And I was expecting him to just give me some sort of answer, and he goes, He goes, you know, I hate that Chip Kelly. And there was another word. And I was like, oh, okay. And so we're talking about this, and someone came up behind, and they were like, I'm sorry, can we order? I mean, why aren't you guys, we're in Los Angeles, why aren't you guys talking about the Rams? And he leaned out and he said, we're talking about Philly football here. You don't like it? Get lost. And I went, okay, this is gonna be a good cheesesteak. And I said, he says, so what do you want? I said, give me one with whiz. And he's like, all right. Yep. And that was it.
Whiz wit. Yeah, that's the South Philly experience.
Yep.
I know exactly the food truck you're talking about. For a couple years anyway, they would park right out in front of Riot.
Yep.
They would park right out in front of Riot. We it's just a couple blocks walk. You know, we go there, and they always had a line. It was always well appreciated. But whiz wit. Onions without for me because I'm that light constitution, but no, they were fantastic. And they had did you ever try their? This is really not what I expected to talk about the second half. Did you ever try the Californian that they had where they put fries in the cheesesteak?
Oh.
I know it sounds like a Californian cheesesteak, but it was the same thing. Everything's the same. Everything's your standard Philly steak, but then they put the fries embedded in the cheesesteak, but like when they cook it, not like they cooked it and then they insert a bunch of fries. Like no, from the moment it goes on the grill, it's got the fries in there, so they're all soggy.
Are those fries made of avocados or something?
No, it's fries. It's potato fries.
Why do they call it Californian?
I don't know. I just put it in my face.
No, I have not had that.
I didn't ask the question. I just put it in my face. It was delicious. And it was only $1 more. I'm like $1 more, and you'll put French fries in my Philly cheesesteak?
For anybody who's asking or questioning though, a Philly cheesesteak is either provolone or whiz. That's it. You got Swiss cheese? Nah. I mean, you can put whatever you want on it.
You're just living in a world of wrong.
But then just get out of Philadelphia.
You're just sitting steeped in an aura of incorrectness.
Yeah.
All right. So, I asked this of everybody here in the second question. How'd you get into video games? And why, of everything you can do in video games, of every discipline that exists, did you pick animation?
I think I need to answer those backwards.
Okay.
So
I'll drink some more water.
when I was in high school, and wanted to go to art school. I was going to be a graphic designer, and I've been accepted to college for that. And we went to the Tyler School of Art Portfolio Day, and showed my portfolio to a bunch of other colleges while we were there. And my mom was like, "We got to go. We got to go to this one. There's one in Florida." And I was like, "Mom, I'm just beat. I don't want to do it anymore." She's like, "Come on, just one last one." So I went there and talked with them, and they said, "Well, we have this new thing we're doing called computer animation." This would have been
1948.
Yeah, this would have been the time when everyone was wearing flannel, right? So, and
smelling like
I was playing Street Fighter 2 with my friend Brian, who, if he's watching, Brian, shout out to Brian. And I said to him, if I get accepted at Ringling, then I would go into doing animation. And they said, "Why don't you come on down?" We got to Florida. I saw two girls walk past me in Florida attire, and yeah, that's how I got into animation. So.
And video games, Brian?
Right, video games. Out of school, the year that I graduated school, there were a whole bunch of layoffs in the visual effects industry, and it was tough to get a job. My first job offer that I got, and that was firm, was a company in Portland, Oregon called Image Builder. And they did things like 2D character and special effects for kids games and stuff like that. My first game was called Tonka Diggin' Rigs. And it had this thing that you strapped onto your keyboard, and you turned the wheel like this, and it pushed the buttons and everything like that. Yeah, that was my first job, and then just bouncing around the industry until one day a recruiter called me and said, "Have you ever thought about living in Germany?" And I was like,
"Who hasn't?"
No. So, yeah, I went out to a company in Germany. They were in Coburg at the time, which is like this really small town in Germany, the birthplace of Prince Albert, actually. Had the interview. They had some after-dinner drinks, probably one too many after-dinner drinks, and I took the job. And that's how ultimately I ended up sitting here with you.
And have you since you joined the game industry, have you stayed in the game industry pretty consistently? You know, it's not uncommon for people to come in and then go somewhere else for a while and then find their way back.
I've moonlighted freelance, some non-games industry stuff from time to time, but almost entirely. Like as far as like a resume goes, yes.
Yeah, no, I started with Blizzard, during the World of Warcraft days, and then I was like, yeah, I need something a little more mature than this. And then I went and taught high school. So it's not uncommon to come in and go out and like this. But yeah, so you've been in the industry pretty consistently then for over 2 decades at least now. It sounds like
1998.
1998. Wow. And I'm not going to ask you something as prosaic as your favorite or the best or whatever. But when you think about your history, when you think about the things you've worked on, not Star Citizen, before Star Citizen and Squadron like this, and I ask for a highlight, something that you're particularly proud of, what comes to mind?
The Crisis series.
Crisis?
Hands down. Because there's a lot of similarities that I feel at times here at CIG with that, because I remember we didn't know what we couldn't do, so we just sort of did it, right? And it was always we want to do this better. The animation in particular and the cinematics and the performances in particular on the Crisis series get better as you go, number 1, Warhead 2 and 3, and just the quality of the animation, the things. Little details and stuff like that someone said to me just the other day, it was yesterday I think, was asking me about Crisis 3, and they said that they remember playing the game, and when they were switching suit modes and reloading, that the actual animation of reloading the weapon was different in every suit mode. So you had this sort of in power mode, he'd slam that thing forward, and in speed mode it was like, and in stealth it was pulling it back and
very quietly pushing it forward.
Yeah, it was sort of like riding it in a way, and stuff like that. And that he sort of felt like that created this experience that really tied him more into the suit mode and what he was trying to do. And that just loops right back to what we talked about this morning, just like half an hour ago, on the first person view and those hands, and how that your hands and what you do convey your character and their emotion in the first person view.
That's really cool. I know I mean, it's weird to say that. I wanted to say you're absolutely right. Like you could be wrong picking something you're proud of, but I'm like, yes, it's those reload animations are exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. Those things that don't seem super obvious, are not in your face, but those little interstitial moments that make all the difference between something feeling tangible and believable and immersive, if we can say the name.
I think that's one thing though that it's about when it comes, especially in first person. And we have a lot of work still to do on our first-person animations and our first-person feel to really dial that down and craft it down to something that feels solid. It's not, I like to say that it's not about necessarily what you're doing, it's about the feel of it, especially in the camera, right? When the way that the camera moves, if you're a game that does that sort of thing, the way that the camera moves can really make an effect on how the player perceives what's going on around them.
With that, we're out of time. You fulfilled the full hour, Brian. Ooh. Congratulations.
Did you just call me Brian?
Because you were saying Brian, you put it in my head. You are Steve.
Shout out to my friend my friend Brian, if you're watching. Here's one for you. This is water, by the way.
And special shout out to Boone's Bonin, who said it several times during the show. This talk is really useless. Thanks for watching. All right, so that was animation director, I was going to say Steve Bender.
There we go.
I'm Jared Huckabee. That's it for this episode of Star Citizen Live, the animation vocation. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Be sure to check out the robertspaceindustrial.com website and information for more on Xenothread and everything else that's going on. I think Xylo put up a thing last night. Its time zones are different. I don't know exactly when it was, but I woke up this morning and it was there. So check that out. And we'll be back next week with Inside Star Citizen and Star Citizen Live. As for what's going to be on it, it's actually in flux right now. So. We had a couple options, so stay tuned. You'll find out when you watch it. Take care, everybody. Be nice to each other. And if you haven't gotten enough of me today, in a couple hours, Beacon, the Belgian Star Citizen fan-run convention, is having a 24-hour live stream that starts at like 6 p.m. It starts in like an hour or two, and I'm a guest. I'm actually going to be on the other side of the thing, just answering questions in like a couple hours. You can check that out. I think it's twitch.tv/Beacon under events. I don't know. Belgian Star Citizen Fan Convention. Put that into Google and you'll find what you need. Take care, and we'll see you next week, everybody. Bye.